Okay, so afternoon everyone. Hopefully you can see our screen all right. Welcome to day 2 of our virtual careers event. Thank you to those of you who've already joined us for our 2 sessions this morning. So this afternoon you've got the pleasure of a presentation from George, who is one of our graduate civil engineers. So he's going to talk you through his experience and his career journey, and then we'll have a bit of a Q&A at the end. So I will hand you over to George, and then we'll speak to you afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. Hope it's been good so far. So my name is George Young. I'm currently now employed at Bentley's as a site manager, but I came into Bentley's a little while ago as a graduate site engineer, much like what a lot of you guys will be hopefully coming to do in the future. So just in this presentation, I'm just going to run through my steps into coming into the engineering world and into Bentley's. I'll talk about a few of my favourite projects, and then just some tips and tricks for you guys as you're looking for your graduate roles. So just to start then with my personal journey at Bentley's. So prior to joining any company, I did my A-levels, and then I went and did my 4 years master's degree. I went to the University of Leeds and I did my 4 years in civil and structural engineering. Throughout my time at Leeds, obviously in the 4th year or 3rd year for a lot of you guys now, I started looking at my opportunities and placements and where I could go as a graduate after then. So after a few applications, a few of the processes like you're going through now with these kind of open events, I went through to JN Bentley and I joined them in the summer of 2017, and that was onto the graduate site engineering scheme. So from then, I've had a few highlights between then and now, but one of the main ones for me was about 3 or 4 months following that, I then enrolled onto the Institute of Chartered Engineers Chartership Scheme. I've been now working on that for 3 years and hopefully getting towards the end of my chartership now. And I know that's a big thing for students coming out of university, is to enrol onto the ICE scheme, and Bentley's gave me lots of support on that, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So there's a few highlights that I've missed out there, which I'll touch up on my favourite projects. But one of my big highlights when I've been at Bentley's is to support with the Constructionarium scheme, which is a scheme for university students to give them some hands-on experience whilst out on construction sites, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. About this time last year, I moved from the Environment Agency framework, which is what I initially worked on for 2.5 years. And that's when I've now moved into the Angling Water framework. And at that point as well, that also tied in with myself moving from the kind of site engineering role onwards to site agent to site manager. So that's been my journey so far since joining Bentley's in the 3.5 years or so since leaving university. So into that as well, I think it's keen to stress that although I've only been here 3.5 years, that Bentley's have given me loads and loads of opportunities to achieve some qualifications. For example, I've achieved stuff like my SMSTS, which is one of the main safety qualifications, which means I can supervise and look after construction sites. Also qualifications such as my 3-day first aid, again, a mandatory requirement if I then want to be site manager and onwards. Other courses as well, like confined space entry, which I've done parts of in my time. The big one for me, which I'm really proud of, is achieving my temporary works coordinator, which usually takes a little bit longer than the time I've been here, but I've worked really hard to achieve that. And that means I can look after all aspects of temporary works out on site. So very, very proud of achieving that one, and got lots of support on my scheme through Bentley's for that. Likewise, about this time last year, I achieved my appointed person, which means I can review, write and plan any lifting operations on site. Again, a really good qualification to have, which is very transferable and means I can, as I say, do lift plans out on site when I'm there. One of the first qualifications I achieved back when I was an engineer was the underground service locator. So that's using the Cat and Jenny to find and detect underground services, avoidance, cable avoidance, lots of good stuff with that, which meant as an engineer, that was another string to my bow to ensure that I could go out and about on sites and make sure we're doing things safely regarding underground services. I also, at the start of my journey at Bentley's, got my RAMS training, that's risk assessment and method statement. I know that's one you do touch on a bit at university, but I then got that formal training, which meant that I could write RAMS for myself, and that really underpins pretty much everything we do out on Bentley sites is our RAMS. And then another one as well was achieving my reinforced concrete supervisor. So that's testing concrete, design of concrete, form work, steel work, all that kind of thing I can then supervise out on site. So there's just a list of some of the qualifications that Bentley's were able to offer me in the 3.5 years since I've been here, and they really are fantastic at offering you training and qualification opportunities, especially in your graduate schemes. So now I'm just going to touch on 4 or 5 of my most interesting projects since I've been here, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what you could do when you first join as a graduate, and then progressing onwards into some of the other responsibilities you can have. So my first project isn't as such a project, it's a framework. So when I first joined Bentley's, I worked out of the Peterborough office for the on the Environment Agency works. It was called the Asset Refurbishment Programme of Works. And this was all about refurbishing flood defences, river engineering, coastal engineering, just protecting the east of England against the rising tide levels and flood levels. So lots of small, very delicate and interesting pieces of work. So this was worth about £10 million a year. For example, you can see on this picture here, we've got the River Great Ouse on the right-hand side, and this is building a brand new flood wall right in the back garden of a property owners there. Very interesting work, dealing with a landowner, doing all the setting out of the concrete work and the embankment work as well, with the idea being that this embankment was due to slip at any moment and could have caused flooding for hundreds of homes in the area. So very interesting work on the EA's projects. Now, as I say, this was the first stuff I did as soon as I joined into Bentley's, and the great nature of this was that whereas a lot of site engineers are put onto one project and they're on there for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, I would go to a new site pretty much every day, which meant I got loads of different experiences at lots of different types of work, and that was both with some setting out work as well, like you can see in the picture, and also surveying works. So for example, in this picture you can see we're working on a floating pontoon. Again, that's on the River Ouse, I believe, and that's setting out a 9 metre high steel pile on a floating platform in a river to a tolerance of about 40 mil. So it's a very technical work, and I got lots of great training and experience that meant I could go out and do that myself. Other stuff doing when you're first joining as an engineer on a framework like this was level control, making sure we're installing whatever the permanent works are to the correct level, dealing with quality control, whether that be looking after your concrete, materials, steel work. And really the great thing about being on that framework for a year and a half or so was it just got me all that experience and all the different aspects of working on live construction. So I got to go around the whole of the business of Bentley's, especially in the EA area, and meet lots of different site teams, understand lots of different things that I could do out on site, and that was fantastic for broadening my experience very early on. So I really enjoyed that first framework that I was on. Moving on from there then, so after kind of going around all these different sites, as I've explained, I then got put onto the Lincoln Defences scheme, and I was on there for about 6-9 months in total. Now this was a £9 million work, again for the Environment Agency, and this was mainly about refurbishing major flood defences within the city of Lincoln. So you can see on that picture to the left-hand side there, that's the installation of a sluice gate on one of the water controls within the city. So not only was it civils work as well, there's a bit of mechanical and electrical engineering as part of that. The point of this project, again, like the previous ones, was providing additional flood protection, which I reckon was about 10,000 homes in total. So again, really interesting work, very varied. But the joy with this one was, whereas last time I was going day by day, this time I could fully immerse myself in a project for a good amount of months. So I felt really involved in it from the very start, going all the way through the project. Now, the two other good things about this project was I started it as a site engineer, but as I was on the project longer and longer, I became a bit of a sub-agent or a kind of assistant site manager. So not only then was I responsible for the engineering parts of this work, I was also looking at the kind of orders, paperwork, safety management, looking after some of the lads, giving morning briefings, that kind of thing. So I started to get that experience of management as well as doing the engineering side of stuff. And then the other great thing about this was that as part of my ICE development, we highlighted a gap in my knowledge, which I could probably benefit from getting 3 months in design. So when I was within this framework, we worked alongside JBA Consulting, who do a lot of the environmental engineering. So they offered me a 3-month design placement whilst on the same Lincoln project, about halfway through the project, which was fantastic because that gave me lots of different experiences then, both within design. And what I would say is having a couple of years of site experience behind you would then really benefit you if you do want to go into a design life a bit further down the line, because you've got all that experience in the back of your mind. And again, it was great for my my overall engineering development that I had kind of both sides of the coin, the site life and then also in the design office. So that was a really good project. Now the next one is certainly one of my proudest couple of 2 or 3 weeks out on a Bentley site, and this was to do with the Wainfleet emergency works. So you may or may not recall about June, July last year, there was lots of heavy rainfall, and up in Wainfleet, which is just on the Lincolnshire coast, on the east coast, one of the flood relief channels burst its banks, as you can see from the picture on the left. And the result of this is that the flood water then flooded about 1,000 properties in the nearby town. It's obviously devastating effects, and it was all over the BBC News, Sky News, and what have you. And Bentley's, as we worked on the EA frameworks, we were the very first people to site, and I was one of the first on site to help breach this. So an amazing 2 or 3 weeks working long hours to ensure that the people of Wainfleet were no longer going to be at risk from flooding. And you can see here we had people from the military, the Royal Air Force in this case, helping to breach the gap. And as I say, it did make nationwide news, and it was a quite a high profile job for Bentley's. So my role on that, again, I was this was just after the Lincoln work. I was both a site engineer, but also offering that kind of assistant site manager role as well. So not only was I doing kind of the level control, the setting out, and those kind of things, I was also helping with dealing with the media. As you can see on the right hand side, that's the head of the Environment Agency being interviewed by BBC News. So dealing with them, inductions, paperwork, risk assessments, material orders, just a bit of everything. And we had 24/7 cameras set up watching everything that we were doing. So we were under huge pressure to get this sorted out in case any more rain came and did the same kind of flooding. So and part of that is, yeah, it's enabling the fast response. It's dealing with all those pressures at the time, kind of providing engineering solutions there and then. You know, you haven't got weeks and months to provide a design. You need to get this done within a week or so, and managing those various different stakeholders during the local emergency. It was really interesting. I certainly slept like hell after the 2 or 3 weeks I got off that job, because it was long days, but I was very proud to be a part of that, and I hope that thankfully now that the people of Wainfleet are better protected against anything like this. So my next project isn't a Bentley's project as such. I did mention on it about the start of the presentation, is the construction area training course. Obviously lots of you are coming into this from university. You may or may not have this up and running at your university, this course, but what it is Bentley's sponsor, in this case it's the University of Leeds, to go on to a week-long training course down at it's in Norfolk on the course, which is called Construction Area. Now what it is we get, in this case, 60 university students. We take them down there for the week, and from scratch they build a lifelike structure. So in this case it's the Millal Viaduct, and this is amazing because you've got 60 or 60-70 students on site who've got very limited experience actually out on site, and I'm there alongside a team of 4 or 5 others, helping them to achieve these goals. So you can see on the right hand side here was the construction of a model downscale of the Gherkin in London. So it's not just on a Bentley site, it's your standard hours, you go home each day with this. It's from the morning you wake up until all the way through till the evening. You're helping these students with not only with the construction on site, doing the steel fixing, concreting, foundations, lifting ops, that kind of thing, but also leading them on safety and being their eyes and their ears, and just dealing with the millions of questions that they send your way throughout the week. So it's a very rewarding thing to get on, and that's the kind of thing that Bentley's can offer, in this case myself as an engineer, that not only are we developing the university students who are coming on the course, they're also developing the free engineers. I was one of a team of free engineers actually going out there to help them. So I learned a heck of a lot out on that project, and it's really good. That could, in fact, they then started rolling this out at Bentley's itself. So we now offer this training course to our level 2 and level 3 apprentices as well. So there's even more options for engineers like myself, and hopefully some of you guys in the future to go and lead on projects like Construction Area, because it is brilliant. So next one then, this is moving on from the Environment Agency world. So this is now I've started to go into the Anglian Water side of things. So this is the scheme called Grapham Commissioning. It's a project that's actually been going on since about 2011, 2012. And it's all about providing resilience to drought in the Anglian Water region. So we built various different projects in the last 8 or 9 years, and I just come in for the last year, as a site manager just to finish off some of those projects and then do the commissioning phase of the work. So clean water work, we built things like a storage reservoir on the left, so this holds millions and millions of litres of clean water, built pump stations, and then we also did a flow reversal trial, which I'll just touch on here. So that picture on the right hand side is a storage reservoir, that's the same picture as here. That's what it looks like inside. That's how it is from the outside before construction. Now you can see from the map on the left. Now I'll try and keep this short because I could waffle on about this forever, but the idea with this is that Anglian Water had 3 main reservoirs and they wanted to be able to connect all 3 reservoirs so that if one got short of water, they could send water back to the other one. That's probably the best way of explaining it. So as part of that, instead of building a brand new pipeline to go in the opposite direction, they thought of utilising an existing one. So this I'm pointing at my screen like you can see me pointing, but this horizontal line along the bottom, the idea was that this would become the first ever project which would be able to reverse the flow on a main. So usually it flows from right to left, and that's how it does in operation. But if the reservoir you could see on the right hand side ever ran low, it would be possible by building extra pump stations to send the water back along the line, and it was the first in the country to do this. So at the point I came in at the stage where we had to trial this pumping going backwards, and that brings in lots and lots of water quality risks because this was an existing water main which was 60 years old, which has always ran in one direction. The minute you turn it back in the other direction, there's a risk of reducing the water quality and bringing particulates into the water. So there's quite a high risk operation, and we had a few 100,000 people's water at risk here, and I was in charge of managing that part of the scheme. So quite high responsibility, but very rewarding to find that we did achieve our outputs as a company on quite a big scheme for Anglian Water. So that's the Grafham commissioning scheme. And then the last one, excuse me, I'm going to touch on is the Strategic Pipeline Alliance. Now this project is so new, I haven't actually got that many pictures of it yet, but the point of the SPA, as it's called, and what I imagine if many of you do come in to join Bentley's, I imagine quite a few of you may end up on SPA, as it's such a big job for Bentley's. The crux of it is that the Anglian Water region, as you can see shaded there, has quite a lot of water in the north of the region, but very little in the south. So the idea being is that they're going to build a brand new pipeline, 450 kilometres in total, connecting the north to the south, and that will help to improve any drought resilience. So if we do have droughts in the south, we can pull the water from the north, as well as kind of mitigate any climate change effects. So that's the part of SPA. So it's a 5-year project for Anglian Water that I've been in from kind of the last 5-6 months. So on that, I'm part of the Lincoln to Grantham scheme. So on that diagram on the left, that's kind of the second arrow you can see there. And that in total is worth about £68 million. Now, as I say, this is a very new framework, and in fact, I'm the very first site manager who's actually gone out to site on the framework. So we landed on site about 6 weeks ago now, and we've maybe got another couple of weeks to go. Now, that's quite a big thing for me, being the first one on a £300 million framework, because the result of that is I end up having millions of directors, and everyone who's been locked up because of COVID since March really wants to come out and spend a visit. So I seem like I've been spending every other day taking people around, and there's lots of eyes and ears on your project. So you need to be making sure everything's very, very safe. But again, that's been very rewarding for me as a new site manager coming into it. Now, the actual works we've been doing at the moment is the pre-construction works. So that's ground investigations like trial pits, boreholes, that kind of thing. We've also been doing the archaeological digs, also topographical surveys and utility surveys. So we're in the stage where we're gathering all that information with a hope to then start mobilising to build the pipe for Lincoln to Grantham in about spring, summer of next year. We've also been doing a lot of cutting edge construction trials as well. So we're trying to introduce things like digital twin, which you may have heard of before, digital rehearsals, gathering lots of kind of digital data about construction. The idea being it will then speed up the production rates when we do come to site. So lots of interest in that kind of thing. And it's going to be one of the groundbreaking ICE projects regarding Project 13, which definitely worth reading up about after this. So that's 4 or 5 of my my main projects that I'm really proud of, but there's lots and lots in between. So if you've got any questions on anything else, please do ask them at the end. So just moving on now to my experience of the development programme as a whole since joining Bentley's. So you might think, I've taken on quite a bit of responsibility with things there, but all of that is built upon the fact that at the very start of my time with Bentley's, I had lots of experienced engineers to help me along the way. They were teaching me the way with setting out, with surveying, bringing me up to speed with how to conduct yourself around site. So there is lots of support from other engineers in this case, so that when you do join, you aren't just out there doing it all on your own. You have got a safety net to fall out on. The other great thing about the development program, there's lots of regular review periods and opportunities throughout. So as I mentioned, it was raised during my chartership review each year that there was a gap in my knowledge where I could pick up things with design, hence why I then got a 3-month design program. I've had other engineers I know who've done a few months in the commercial team, in the safety team, in all the various teams around Bentley's to kind of make them a more well-rounded engineer, more well-rounded person. So lots of reviews where if you want to go in a slightly different direction or get some slightly other different experiences, then you can go and do that. And then the other great thing there as well is there's always different opportunities to progress. And I think I've had lots of opportunities to progress, but the key part of that is only if you are willing to put the work in, because it's not going to be there for free if you're not willing to go the extra mile. But if you are and you're willing to go to different areas, try different things out, then those opportunities are always there for you to progress at Bentley's. So why should you choose a graduate role and career at Bentley's? Well, for me, we are a world-class civil engineering contractor, and you've only got to look, especially with the effects of COVID and what have you at the moment. There are lots and lots of companies all around the UK which are struggling financially throughout how things are going, but Bentley's are still picking up new frameworks and new work. We've finally expanded right into the south of the country now, even during COVID, and that just shows the confidence that these water companies have in Bentley. So if you do choose to have a graduate role in Bentley's, that is certainly the way to go to make sure you're at a nice, secure and profitable company. So definitely one to go for. You are also given that responsibilities from day one. I've obviously, from my time as a engineering student at uni, I've got friends from there who've gone on to some other different companies, and they just feel like their first 3, 6, 9 months, whatever it is just sat at the back of a meeting room, taking notes and not, doing some AutoCAD drawings, but not really feeling engaged in a team. Whereas from Bentley's, literally my first day on site, after day 2 or 3, I was straight on there working as part of a team and already been given some responsibilities. And there is that support there as well, which to make you a great site engineer, because Bentley's has got some brilliant experienced engineers who are willing to train you and support you through that process. What I would say as well is that definitely going down the site engineering route is the way to go. I'm sure not everyone here may have aspirations to be on site full time, and I fully understand that, but I certainly think having some years under your belt on site just makes you that much better and much more all-round engineer. Again, I look at my time when I had my 3 months in design. I had a couple of years of site experience behind me, and straight away I was able to offer things to that design team because I was alongside other graduate designers, which they didn't necessarily have because they didn't have that site experience. So it's definitely the ways to get some site time under your belt. I mean, lastly, is that training and progression opportunities, as I keep saying. I've had so many training courses sent my way. Bentley's offer fantastic training courses and are always willing to support you on that progression. So just another reason to join Bentley's. So my advice then for anyone thinking about a role or career in site or civil engineering. The first one for me is to listen. You'll come in day one and there'll be lots of people who've been on site 30, 40 years and they've got some fantastic knowledge and experience, and it's really important to absorb that information as soon as you can because that will help you out later down the line. And you sometimes see site engineers who are very new onto the job and they're not listening to those around you and trying to do things a different way, and it doesn't always mean the best result. So listen to your peers, listen to your other engineers, listen to your experienced people on site, and you'll go a long way in civil engineering. That one there is to take every new opportunity you get. I can think of at least 2 or 3 times in Bentley's I was given opportunities to go and work on the Rolls-Royce framework for a month. I'm completely out of my comfort zone, but I learned a great deal on that. Going on to the construction area course when I didn't really have much knowledge of it beforehand, but I felt really progressed after that. And even coming into the Anglian Water framework as a site manager, like not only was I not a site manager before, I hadn't worked in the clean water industry, so it was quite a big step up. But now a year later, I'm one of the first site managers on the SPA framework. So you've got to use all those opportunities, and you can go far. That final one there is just never ever be afraid to ask. You do have a lot of responsibility as a site engineer, and a lot can rest on your shoulders as you get more experience. So if you're unsure of anything, if you think something could be wrong, then definitely ask those around you, and always check twice and dig once. So that's it for my presentation. Hopefully I've sold Bentleys and site engineering to you quite a bit. So thanks all for listening, and if you've got any questions, let me know.
Thanks, George. That was really good. So yeah, there should be, there's a little kind of Q&A box that should be on the right hand side of your screen. So if you do have any questions, if you just pop them in there. I have got a couple already for you, George. So firstly, what attracted you to the business? Because you didn't do a placement with us, did you? Did you just join as a grad? Yeah,
so I obviously when I was in my 4th year, you get your list through university of lots of different companies that are looking out there. So I applied both for some design roles, some site roles, and I suppose the thing for me is when I went to one of the Bentley's open day, that was when it was sold to me that, you know, it's this going out on site and doing the site engineering side of things is great. And it was this kind of these talks like we're doing now that sold Bentleys as such. I thought it was quite a family-run business. You could feel its roots, whereas I think at some of the really big civil engineering companies, you come in as a graduate and you feel like a bit of a number. So that's definitely why I went with Bentleys in the end, and I'm really glad I did.
Good, that's nice. That's good to hear. One question about the development scheme and chartership. How kind of important do you think that is to career development in engineering, sort of in general? Is it something you have to do, or?
No, and I know some fantastic engineers who've been in the business a long time, and they've never felt the need to go down the chartership route. And I certainly feel chartership's probably a little bit more important if you are going into a consultancy, because that seems to be the way they try and get their engineers through. But within Bentleys, I think you get enough experiences even without the chartership scheme to progress anyway. But certainly if you've got a degree and you've already done that master's or bachelor's degree already, the opportunity is there to go and do it. So I would obviously say crack on and do it, but it's certainly not the end of the world if you don't feel like you want to go down a chartership scheme. There's still lots for you to do.
Cool. A kind of similar question. How important was your postgrad study to your chartership and career development? So that'll be your masters. Yeah,
so well, I did an integrated master's degree, so I was always from the start doing that extra bit. But I suppose that the difference is that once you have got that master's, you can then go straight on to chartership within the ICE. Whereas I think if you haven't got the master's, it's the incorporated route at the ICE that you end up going down. So yeah, it was important to have that master's to then progress on to chartership. But I believe there are loopholes that you don't have to necessarily have the master's to go on to chartered. You can get it through live experience. But no, certainly, yeah, I'm glad I got the master's, which meant I could progress on to my chartership.
Cool. Did you do a placement at all before? You won't have done, will you, if you just did an integrated one?
No, I just did, yeah, the 4 straight years at university. I think I was so tired from university, I thought I'd rather spend my summers at home because I had a bit of a part-time job as well. So I did miss out on that, but yeah, I was fortunate enough that Bentley's picked me up even without a placement.
Yeah. What did you find kind of most difficult going from all those years of study into kind of just the world of work? Did those years at uni set you up really well? Or kind of did you get the right support when you kind of came in head first, or?
Yeah, I'd say university's fantastic at giving you that theoretical knowledge and in the back of your mind understanding why a material or a design has been done that way. I'd suggest the struggle that we see with students coming in to start with is communicating ideas to guys on the ground who are fantastic at what they do, but they're not engineering knowledge. They haven't got that kind of theoretical background. So that is the big challenge, is being able to explain complex ideas to people who may not be on receipt of complex ideas, is maybe the nicest way of putting it. That's definitely a challenge, but you learn to do that, and you learn about ways of communicating so that you can communicate to the guy on the ground and to the director at the top in different ways.
Super. Is it better to go for a master's first or a graduate job?
Good question. It depends what your overall aim is, I suppose. If you're hell bent on becoming a chartered engineer, then obviously you have to have that master's. But then I look at the role I did when I started and through Bentley's, and I think, could I have done that without my masters? Absolutely. I don't think there was anything necessarily in that masters which would have, put me on the back foot within the graduate role. But again, I knew kind of early on I wanted to go towards my chartership, and hence why I went to do the masters as well. But yeah, it's entirely up to you what your kind of long-term goal is on that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I'm not an engineer at all. I did a business degree, but I did my degree, got a graduate job for a couple of years, and then went back and did my masters. So you can do it that way. And I think it was nice to kind of have that break from education for a bit and just get stuck into a job. And it's not too long of a gap to be able to get back into how to Harvard reference and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I have known people as well come out with the bachelor's, spend a few years doing the engineering, and then going back to Bentley's and saying 1 day a week I want to be working on my masters, and you can almost do them side by side in some cases. So I think that option's there to also keep growth going as well. Yeah,
no, definitely. What else have we got? Why? So I know you sort of said that kind of going to these open days and stuff yourself sort of sold the company. But did you generally think of going into the water sector? And was there anything kind of particular that drew you to that, or was it just the business itself?
No, not really. I wasn't quite blinkered into what in kind of engineering industry I went into. I think especially when you're a graduate, you're just happy to have an offer as well. So I wasn't hell bent on going into the water industry or the environment industry, but as I say, I was more than happy to kind of go into whatever field it was. And now I'm in the water industry. I find it fascinating, to be honest. I really enjoy working in the Anglian water frameworks, probably more so than I did in the EA world, just because there's so much other things to consider as well. But no, I'm very pleased to be in the water industry. It is really good.
Good. I mean, I guess you kind of just answered that then, but what is it specifically about the water sector? Is it kind of just the variety of the works that you can get involved in, and kind of we won't ever run out of work because we always need water?
Exactly. There's a security level to being in the water industry. Like we've been working throughout COVID. When that first announcement came back in March, we were all very unsure, but a lot of our water clients said to us, no, we've got to keep the taps flowing, don't worry about that. So we've proved we can go through a global pandemic and still make money. So there's certainly that kind of security there. But also as well, like this year, I've been on a lot of emergency works within the water industry, and I really get revved up for the emergency works. I had one last week as well, just because of that pressure that's put on you, and there's quite an adrenaline rush that comes with that, especially when you're dealing with leaks on water mains, which are feeding hundreds of thousands of customers. So I really enjoy that side of being on the water industry as well.
Yeah, I think you can really kind of see the impact that you're having as well. It's a really critical kind of asset, I guess. So it's nice to have that real impact, I think.
And that's it. It's like, people work down in London and build really tall, high sky rises and never step foot in them. Whereas I'm working in the Anglian Water region. I live in the Anglian Water region. I see the effects that I will have on the people around me, and I get great pride in that as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So as a site engineer, how much influence do you have on the design of the projects that you work on?
Good question. Some, like, you're not sat around at the design table at the start, and it entirely depends on the teams you're in. But what I would say is, although you may not be fully engaged in the initial design, once that's handed over to site, that is when your opportunity is to change things as well. And there's been various projects I've been on where I've received a design, sometimes from a graduate designer who's never stepped foot on a site. And I say, look, we need to change lots of this. So you can constantly have that back and forth with the design team. And I was very pleased to work alongside JBA because they're very good for that kind of thing, that you can influence that design as well. And that's great when you're doing some of your ICE attributes. A lot of it is about challenging design and finding a better way to do things. So there are opportunities within your site engineering to affect the design. And as I say, depending on your framework, you may also get engaged in that kind of pre-construction work as well, because a lot of the work I did was the kind of topographical surveys at the start as well. So that helped to assist with some of the design. So there are opportunities there, yeah. Yeah,
that's good. Thinking about the development scheme, how kind of is your work-life balance? Is it easy kind of to manage the requirements of that whilst you're dealing with all your emergency works and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's entirely up to you, kind of how quick or slow you take it. Like I've been on it 2.5 years now, and I'd say I'm about 50% of the way through. So hopefully 2.5 more years. That's 5 years to do the scheme, which is probably slightly below average. But I've got great support from my manager, and to the sense that in August, she let me have 3 or 4 days purely working on my chartership work to get me back up to speed. So I wasn't sat here every evening doing the work. I could do it in my own time, in company time as well, to try and progress that. And because Bentley's understands the value that you add if you become a chartered engineer. So it is entirely up to you. And I certainly had a lot more time when I was a graduate site engineer, and I would say try and get as much done then before, if you do turn into a site manager, you do find your time reducing slightly, but it's entirely up to you how much or little you put in. But I would also say a lot of these design places, they really hammer you to get it done in 2.5 years, and I don't think that makes you a very good engineer overall. Whereas with Bentley's, I'm not overly fussed if it takes me another 3 or 4 years, because I'm still gathering all that great information, and it'll just make me that more rounded engineer.
Yeah, super. Is a PhD important for an engineer? I guess that kind of is probably dependent on sort of your own career development and the career path you want to take.
Yeah, I certainly think a contractor like Bentley's, I certainly don't know anyone who's got a PhD. I think obviously if you're looking to go more down a research line of things, or kind of modelling, like I know we have a lot of hydraulic modelers who are doctors in some of the design companies, then yeah, it's again, it's another string to your bow, but it's definitely not any mandatory requirement. As I say, I don't know any PhD students who've joined in Bentley's, but if you do become one of the ones who does, and you've got that with you, then yeah, that's going to get you a long way, definitely. So if it is your ambition to go and do a PhD, cracking, go and get one. Part of me wishes I did, just because I would have liked a couple more years at university perhaps, but if I walked into Bentley's with a PhD, I would have still been there or thereabouts where I am now, so certainly not essential.
Super. What has been the highlight of your time at JN Bentley so far?
Good question. I think as a job, it's probably that Wainfleet job, just because of the high nature of it, and just dealing with the amount of MPs and media and all the politicians and military and everyone coming to site, and lots of people watching you deal with emergency works, and the pressure and the teamwork that brings. You have a very tight-knit team who are all working towards the same goal. So that's certainly one of my proudest projects. I'm very proud of the construction area work that I did as well, not only for my development but for the university students' development, because I don't think there's much more things that are rewarding than that. Taking someone who's got no site experience on the Monday until Friday, building a structure like you've seen on that picture, you can see their development throughout the week, and that's very rewarding as well. So yeah, I'd say those two are definitely, and hopefully in 3 or 4 more years I'll be talking about SPA and on this new pipeline, and how great and building this major UK infrastructure project is as well.
How kind of did you have the opportunity to go work on SPA? Because you've worked for quite a few sort of different clients, haven't you?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of geography in it. I live in the Anglian Water region, so they're always keen to get people who are local to the works. I was working within Anglian Water as well, and SPA is an Anglian Water project. So, they've seen a site manager already on Anglian Water, and they're up to speed on their ways of doing things. Lots of people in my team and my line manager also worked within SPA, and certain people in the business kind of pointed me in that direction and said, look, we think you'll be really good on this new framework, and make sure you're applying and put yourself in for one of the positions. So kind of a mixture of all those things kind of resulted on me coming on to SPA, and I'm really pleased to be on it, because especially when I first joined Bentley's, it was lots of those small jobs, which was great for experience, but now being on a job which is 68-70 million pounds, there's loads to go out there. There's going to be lots of fascinating engineering that we're going to be doing on there. We might be crossing a live railway over the top, lots of lifting ops, temporary works. I just can't wait to get on with it, to be honest.
Well, does sound exciting. I'm not sure I could handle it on site. Sounds good. What else have we got? What advice would you give for someone kind of applying for a role at JN Bentley?
That's a good question. I think Bentley's, more than a lot of the applications I did, they're not just about what qualifications you've got on that piece of paper. It's about what other life experiences you've got. It's about, will you become a Bentley person, as we call them? Will you work well in a team? Can you offer examples of good teamwork? Are you able to communicate clearly? And have that confidence, but not to be cocky with it as well, to be quite humbled. I think that's quite a big Bentley feature as well. So I would say that's the main thing, is that, have a good CV, don't get me wrong. You want to have all your academic qualifications on there, But when it comes to your interviews, you want to be yourself, and you want to just pass over that kind of quiet confidence that you believe in yourself, and that you could work as well as a team within Bentley's.
Cool. It's quite a good one. How would you describe the culture of JN Bentley, or how would you describe the company in 3 words? I'll give you 3 words.
In 3 words? Well, that's put me on the spot. I want to say family, but it's a bit corny. But as I'm struggling, there's a family culture to it, and you can see that in the roots that, you know, we've, as Paul Bentley is still in charge from his dad and what have you, you know, we've still got Bentleys in the business. So I'd say family. Hard working. I know that's 2 words, but we'll put a cipher in there. Hard working. we do strive to work hard and achieve what we can, and respectful as well. We've got lots of people from lots of different parts of the country, lots of different backgrounds, coming from lots of different companies prior, and I think we really respect each other and we really work well.
Super. That was a good answer. That was good.
That's the best I can make of it.
Put you on the spot, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that is all the questions, unless anyone wants to really quickly type another one. But yeah, we'll hopefully be able to finish in a couple of minutes, so that's a bit early, which is nice. The next session we have is at 1:30, where we'll have one of our hiring managers and a member of the recruitment team on the call, so you can ask them kind of any general career questions that you might have, anything random that you can think of in terms of kind of application process and opportunities and stuff. But yeah, I think we can finish there if we've got no more questions. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you George for your presentation and for joining us today. I'm sure that's kind of really helped give people an insight into the business and a graduate job. So thank you.